What up, you guys? This is Steven, and I'm back with another video. And this time, I want to share with you guys my linguistic autobiography. And some of you may be asking, what's a linguistic autobiography? Well, let me explain. Okay, basically, what a linguistic autobiography is like your autobiography in reference to the languages that you speak with, like in your life, and the relationship that you have with the languages that you speak in your life. Like, you know how an autobiography is often your life story. Well, a linguistic autobiography is pretty much your life story in regards to language. And I got this idea from an article that I read. And you know, this article, it was published in an academic journal entitled Indiana Journal of Hispanic Literatures. The title of the article itself is "Whose Spanish, Whose Language, Whose Power?" question mark, colon, testifying to differential bilingualism. Excuse me. So, testifying to differential bilingualism. And the author of this article is Dr. Francis R. Aparicio. And in this article, he said that he gave an assignment to his students, which the assignment was to pretty much write about your linguistic autobiography, and put it into writing. And I was thinking, this is pretty interesting. Like, I should kind of do this, but in the form of a video, because I really don't feel like writing this, because I think it's a pretty cool idea. So instead of me talking about a, a linguistic autobiography, let me give you mine. Let me just go into this. All right. So the first question that Dr. Aparicio poses, well, it's not really a question, but it says, discuss your own relationship, affective, not effective, but affective, social, and intellectual, to your mother tongue and your second language. Do you see yourself as a bilingual / bicultural individual or not? So let me go into this. All right. So my affective relationship, which is pretty much more or less my emotional relationship with my mother tongue and my second language. Okay, let me go with that part first. Okay, my mother tongue is English, and my second language is Spanish. I would say I'm not sure if I really have an emotional relationship with my mother tongue. Um, English, I'm not sure. I don't think I do. Um, I don't feel like I do. Like, I don't feel like I have to speak English. You know, or I don't know. I don't know. I don't feel any emotion to it. I guess it's because maybe a cultural disconnect with it. You know. Don't get me wrong. I am appreciative to speak English as a native language, because English is a very important language to know in the world that we live in today. It's an international language, and it is the international language. You know, However, I think because probably the cultural disconnect, for me personally, I may not have an emotional connection with English. In regards to Spanish and my emotional relationship, connection relationship, I would say that there's more of a emotional relationship, and I guess it's because maybe I feel like I can connect with people more when I speak Spanish, or connect with certain people that I would like to connect with. Um, hmm. I'd say for me, Spanish was a choice. I was not obligated to learn Spanish. Like, no one forced me to. Like, Spanish is not a part of the culture where I come from. Not a part of like the community where I come from. So for me, Spanish was a choice. Um, and I guess that choice was made because I really wanted to speak the language. Um, I guess, and I'm not sure why. I guess it's because I wanted to be a part of another group. Not saying that the group that I come from, like, I don't want to be a part of that group, but I would like to maybe be a part of this group in addition to this group, something like that. More so like that. Um, so yeah, I would say I have more of an emotional connection with my second language than my first language, and I'm not sure why. I didn't. That's strange. I never really thought about that. Okay, next part, my social relationship, and I'm using relationship and connection interchangeably. By the way, I don't mean to do that, but I may slip up and do that. So disclaimer there. Okay, next, my social relationship. Um, Socially, in where I come from, the United States, English is the main language you speak. If you want to get ahead in America, it's in the United States. It's best you know how to speak English. And I come from an English-speaking background. Like, that's the language that like my parents spoke and their parents spoke, and so on and so forth. And as well, that's the language of the dominant society in the United States. As far as the social relationship with Spanish, Spanish is spoken in the United States, and it has been always spoken in the United States since the United States was like founded, pretty much. Like, Spanish has always been in the United States. Some people, like a lot of people, don't know that, but it has. Spanish was the first European language spoken like in the United States. In fact, before it was the United States, like, people were speaking Spanish. And even the legacy of the Spanish, is still kind of is there with like the names. Even the names of some of the states in the United States have like Hispanic origin, or Spanish origin. I guess you can use those interchangeably as well. Like, California, Arizona, Colorado, Montana, Texas, New Mexico. I wonder if am I leaving one out? Oh yeah, I almost forgot. Florida. Like, how could I forget Florida? How could I forget Florida? But yeah, pretty much like the Southwest and Florida, the southwestern part of the United States and Florida. Definitely. Um, and I guess my social relationship, I'm not sure. I guess, um, like, for me, like I said, it was like Spanish has always been spoken since day one. So really, it shouldn't be strange for someone to want to learn Spanish that doesn't come from a Spanish-speaking background if you're in the United States, because it's always been here. But for some reason, it's still sort of treated as a foreign language. It's sort of classified as a foreign language, even though technically it's not really foreign in the United States. It's not really foreign. It's always been here, you know? Some people may not want it to be here, but it's always been here, in one way or another. And the influx of um, immigrants from Latin American countries help continue, help breathe life into the language more, you know. All right. Next, discuss your intellectual relationship with your mother tongue and second language. Okay, I was definitely educated in English since day one. Always educated in English. Went to English-speaking schools, English-speaking colleges. Pretty much the majority of my education was in the English language. The majority of the things that I read were in the English language. You know, in regards to my second language, Spanish, I was exposed to Spanish, in high school in the 10th grade, which is standard for many people, and I wasn't really educated in Spanish until I got to college. Like, I wound up um, majoring in Spanish, or it was one of my majors in college. And in college, I was educated in Spanish, particularly when I took my Spanish classes. Like we take classes in, Spanish literature, Spanish grammar, Spanish linguistics, like Spanish culture, like etc. And we were typically educated and spoke to in Spanish and dealt with Spanish language texts as well. And my intellectual relationship with English and Spanish, I guess ultimately it's just like for English, it was definitely the language I was educated in, and as well as in Spanish, I was educated in the language, like using that as the language of education as well, but not nearly as much as English. And I would have liked to have done that. And I think that should have been an option in the college that I attended, to take certain classes in Spanish, at least maybe like the lower level classes that didn't have anything to do with Spanish, like, political science 101 in Spanish. That should have been an option, you know. Um, U.S. history in Spanish, that should have been an option, you know. Mathematics in Spanish, that could have been an option, but I guess they didn't have the resources to do that. And also, I don't think I would take a Spanish like a mathematics course in Spanish though. That'd be too much, too much for me. All right, next, do you see yourself as a bilingual slash bicultural individual or not? I see myself as more so bilingual than bicultural. Although I feel like I do have some education about another culture, particularly Latino slash Latin American culture within the United States. I do feel like I have some knowledge of that, but I don't feel like I am at the point where I could call myself bicultural. You know, I would call myself bilingual way before I call myself bicultural. And that is because I feel like the bilingualism is stronger than the biculturalism. Like, I feel like I have more experience in, speaking two languages than I do of being a part of two cultures, But I definitely do feel like, okay, I could have a connection with this culture and possibly even be an advocate for this culture, particularly Hispanic American culture slash Latino American culture and community and people, etc. Okay, next question. Trace your entrance into the linguistic world of the other. Did you first learn a second language at home, at school, during travel abroad? How do you characterize those first experiences with another language? What meanings and values professionally are professional, functional, symbolic, ontological, and political have languages had for you throughout your life? Wow, that is a very in-depth question, very in-depth. Like I said before, this was an assignment that students had to put into writing. This was like a writing assignment. I don't know how many pages it was, but I'm pretty sure this was a lengthy assignment. Okay, I'll do the first part first. All right, trace your entrance into the linguistic world of the other. Did you first learn a second language at home, at school, during travel abroad? Okay, so I was first introduced to my second language, Spanish, at school in 10th grade. I would have liked to have been introduced earlier. I've always, for some reason, I'm not sure why, but I always was like, wow, I want to learn Spanish. I was never like, I don't want to learn Spanish. I was always like, hey, that seems pretty cool. I want to learn Spanish. And I'm not sure why that is. I'm not sure. You know, I guess maybe because I felt like, oh, it was kind of like exclusive, like you were being a part of a group that other people may not have had access to, maybe, like, or maybe get to be a part of another group. I'm not sure. Um, I'm not, and that's a little strange that I can't pinpoint the exact reason why I wanted to learn Spanish way back when. But for now, I guess the reason why I want to learn and continue to learn is because I just feel like, it felt right. You know, how you maybe have done something and it felt like, okay, this is the right thing for me to do. I'm where I'm supposed to be. That's a part of it. As well, I enjoy it. I enjoy learning about different cultures. I enjoy learning about, um, not only different cultures, but also a part of my own culture in the United States. Like, I didn't know that Spanish had such an, you know, life in the United States, and also I began to learn more about, people who speak Spanish within the United States and how, they have, you know, ties with the United States from like pretty much the inception of the United States. And sometimes those people who speak Spanish are kind of viewed as foreigners when technically they're not, because like the border crossed them, many of them, the border crossed them, not the other way around. And that happened because of, like, I think there was a war between like Spain and England, and I think England won, so they got the land, you know, um, and that wound up going into the Treaty of Hidalgo. So that's why you have that phrase, and some people, some Latino slash Hispanic people may say that phrase, as well as Chicano people, definitely. Um, we didn't cross the border crossed us. And, you know, not to get too much off subject, but let me just go into something right quick for a quick second. Like, it was this um, young man of Mexican Indian origin who sung the national anthem. And some people were like, okay, why is he singing the national anthem? Because he's not American. But the thing is, like, his family is like generations upon generations. Like, they have been in the United States for generations, at least seven, and they were the people who the border crossed, and he's being viewed as a foreigner in the United States, and that's not right. But thankfully, you know, being, educated about things more so, I'm like, okay, yeah, I get that. I understand that now. Whilst other people may be like, oh, what does that really mean? Like, but let me stick to topic. Well, it's still related to the topic, but let me get back to the topic at hand. So yeah, I was first introduced at school, you know, and I continued to learn Spanish throughout, like through high school. I took like 4 courses in Spanish, Yeah, oddly enough, I was able to take four courses starting in the 10th grade because of the way our scheduling was set up. I was able to take 4 courses of Spanish, and that was pretty cool. And that wound up leading me into, at first, minoring in Spanish in college, then majoring in Spanish in college. You know, and I also took a CLEP test during the summer of, like the summer before I entered my first year of college. So I was able to earn some credit via testing, so that I was able to skip some of the beginner Spanish classes and go into the intermediate level, like start at the intermediate level. So yeah, I learned through school, and at this point, I kind of continue to learn just through, the media. I say the media. That's where I was. But I was first introduced to a foreign language, Spanish, through school. All right, next question. How would you characterize those first experiences with another language? All right. What meanings and values, professional, functional, symbolic, ontological, and political, have languages had for you throughout your life? Okay, so my experience with Spanish, I'd say overall it has been an amazing experience. Really. Um, and I can't imagine my life without it at this point. I feel like if my life was without Spanish, I feel like I would be missing something. You so overall, I've had positive experiences. Although I have had a couple of negative experiences here and there, but overall, it's a positive experience. Um, Professionally, for instance, um, like my resume has been viewed as slightly more favorable than other people's resume because I have Spanish on there as a language that I speak, and some companies really like that because, like, hey, we deal with Hispanic customers and people, etc. It's like it would be a good asset for them to have someone who's is familiar with the Spanish language on their staff. You know, as well, I have received a pay increase in relation to my other coworkers because I speak Spanish. And like at one point, at one job, the job was paying $10, but because I spoke Spanish, the job was paying $12 an hour for me because I spoke Spanish. And really, I didn't even use it that much, maybe like one time, but I was still getting paid that extra increase because I still got that extra pay increase throughout my time there, you know. And it also was like that at another job I worked at. The pay increase wasn't that much though; it was like a quarter more than what everyone else was getting paid. But still, I was, that's still a little extra money. Every little bit counts, right? you know. And let's see, functional. Let's see. I will say functional relationship with language. Let me think. Let's see. My functional relationship, or rather my practical relationship with Spanish. I'd say like, there was a time where I went to Puerto Rico with my sister, and we were in a situation where like no one spoke English, and we were on a bus and we're wondering like, okay, are we going to the right place? Um, you know, and my sister tried to speak to them, but they didn't speak English. But thankfully, I spoke Spanish, was able to get my point across. Like, are we close to the place? Like, are we going to the place? Are we close there? And they had just responded like, yeah, we're getting there, or we're almost there. And as well, the bus driver didn't speak English either, although some of the bus drivers did, but that particular one didn't. And my sister wanted to know, could we bring luggage, because it would be easier for us and cheaper for us to use the bus to get to the place where we're trying to go um, later on during a trip with our luggage. But long story short, we couldn't bring luggage on the bus. So yeah, that's an example of like a functional relationship. Um, and as well, being able to listen to Spanish speaking or Spanish language news, because that kind of helps give me more of an insight of how maybe some like Hispanic people feel about certain issues. Um, See, I feel like I could probably give a better answer, but I just can't think of one at the moment for the functional, practical slash functional. All right. The symbolic meaning and values of Spanish for me personally. Um, I feel like Spanish sort of symbolizes, um, for me, like, culture. You know, I guess that's a little strange. A little The answer's a little strange, but for me, I guess it sort of symbolizes culture, and for me, I guess more so personally, um, hmm, I guess maybe it makes me the symbolism it has in my life. Like I said, culture, um, like cultural connection, maybe like something like that. Overall, the symbolism for me is positive. And to an extent, it even symbolizes maybe like another side of me that I perhaps cannot uh, cannot exist, like another side of me that can't exist unless I use Spanish. Like maybe like symbolizing two aspects of myself, perhaps. The next one is the ontological meanings and values. And I'm not even sure what, to keep it real, I'm not even sure what that word means. I've looked it up and still haven't been able to figure out what that word exactly means. But basically, the dictionary, Merriam-Webster defines ontology, I think that's how you say it, as a branch of metaphysics concerned with nature and relations of being. Second definition, a particular theory about the nature of being are the kind of things that have existed, or that have existence. So basically, what does it have in relation to, what meanings and values does it have in relation to my existence? Hmm. I would say overall, I would have an existence without Spanish, but I feel like my existence would be missing something if I didn't have Spanish. I feel like my existence would be a little different if I didn't have Spanish, because Spanish has sort of made an impact in my professional life and my academic life. You know, it may perhaps have even to an extent made an impact in my personal life. So, you know, without Spanish, I feel like something would be missing in my life, especially at this point. Right. Political meanings and values. So, being able to speak the language, and also it sort of makes me more concerned about the people who do speak the language, the native speakers, and some of the issues that affect them, political issues like, um, English classes, like some people who speak Spanish in the United States don't have the, like a, like they don't speak English fluently in English language classes, and, that's in something that I'm more cognizant of and more aware of. Like, okay, because sometimes it can kind of come off as if people don't want to learn to speak English, but it's really not the case, because as you know, like speaking a foreign language isn't easy. It's just like, oh, one, two, three. Like it's a work in progress. It's ongoing. It's very difficult. The older, especially the older you are, is the more difficult it is to acquire the foreign language. And I think it has made me more sensitive to people in that situation, because like I can relate, because there's some things in Spanish that are really difficult for me, to pick up on. You know, like to keep it real, I'm kind of still, like, I've learned Spanish for over 10 years, and I'm still kind of like differentiating the, like, being able to know when to use por versus when to use para, and that's really a simple. It's seemingly simple, but it is more complicated because in English we don't have that concept. And as well, another concept that really throws me off in Spanish is like le and les. The indirect object in that whole thing. That is a concept that kind of throws me off too. The subjunctive, that definitely throws me off. Like, see, like I can relate, like because there are some aspects of learning language that are really difficult. But if you've never learned a foreign language, then you're just thinking, okay, it's just easy as one, two, three, But it's not like that. And also another political meaning and value is maybe immigration. I know that's a bit cliche, but that is an issue, an issue that affects Spanish-speaking people in the United States. Oftentimes, Spanish-speaking people in the United States are viewed as, immigrants, are even worse, like undocumented immigrants, when they're not. Many of them are not. But many are viewed that way. And to be fair, there are people who are undocumented, and there are people who are documented. So, yeah, so I guess Spanish has made me more aware of the political issues that affect Spanish-speaking people, Let's see. So overall, I would characterize my first experiences with another foreign language as just overall like very good. I never really had any hesitation not to learn Spanish. I never have not wanted to learn Spanish. I've always wanted to learn Spanish for some reason, and I continued to learn Spanish. Like at one point, it was a minor for me, but then it turned into a major for me. So overall positive, but I will speak on one negative experience that I had with a foreign language, Spanish. At a job I was working at, I had to speak to someone in Spanish, but I didn't really know the vocabulary that I needed to know in order to translate what I needed to translate. And they were like, do you speak Spanish? Because they kind of spoke English, but I guess they didn't want to speak English, or they didn't feel comfortable doing it in English. So yeah, that was a bit of a taking a jab at me, Like I do speak Spanish, but I'm just not familiar with this particular vocabulary. Like you speak English, but you may not be particularly familiar with this particular vocabulary on this questionnaire, And that was pretty much the only time that I used Spanish. Other than that, at that particular job, that was pretty much the only time that I used Spanish. So it was a negative experience, but overall it hasn't deterred me from the language. If so, it probably made me want to learn the language even more, so that I wouldn't have that experience again, So on to the next and final portion. Well, I guess at this point, let's see. Contextualize your discussion by including references to geographical, social, historical, and generational factors. And I've already done that already. I've spoken on geographical, social, historical, generational factors. So I think I'm pretty much done with my linguistic biography. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I wind up learning a bit more about myself and my relation with English and Spanish through this that I wasn't really aware of, So, what's your linguistic autobiography? Feel free to share it, maybe in the video, maybe just in the comments, But definitely, thanks a lot for watching this video. I know it's a little long, so definitely thanks a lot. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And feel free to comment. Feel free to subscribe. Feel free to give me a thumbs up. Your feedback and support are extremely appreciated and extremely valued. Into the next video. Adios and goodbye for now. See, even there, my ending phrase is Spanish influence. See? Again, thanks a lot.